Hey, Ken, welcome to the show. As a way of getting started, give us a little background on yourself.
Well, Brian, I'm a longtime listener. I love watching you through the neighborhood. I think I know some of your neighbors. You don't know this, but they actually wave to you in the background when you go through it. But we said this
That's not a
offline.
wave.
It does involve some fingers, sometimes just one. But no, longtime fan. And I said this off screen. I want to say it so it's authentic as well. You say what people are thinking on both sides.
Yeah.
Sometimes you're representing management. Sometimes you're representing the individual. More times than not, the individual. But I shared offline, I only went to sales management because I had a bunch of cruddy bosses and I almost thought the market needed someone to go on the other side. So I'm a 6 or 7 time CRO, love the position. Been born doing sales. I think at 4 years old, I was selling greeting cards door to door in Boston, Massachusetts. I don't know what's in the water in Massachusetts, but some sales executives tend to come out of here. And I'm now living in Santa Cruz, which is the dream. But so excited to be on your show and a longtime fan, and a tribute to you. I send a lot of your material along to my sales team because it authentically is what people are thinking. But yeah, 33 years, mostly high-tech sales, mostly storage. I was employee number 110 of EMC. I got the job when I was in college at Boston College, which is cool. And I was on with Barracuda as they went public. I did a startup, Silicon Valley startup before then, which made me fall in love with California, which we moved across here, which I did not do for the real estate values, although it's appreciated tremendously since then. Did some consulting and actually created a SaaS company called Sign Now, SIGNNOW. I'm no longer there, but kind of created that. It's number 3 in the East Signature market. So I know a little bit about SaaS, a little about security, and a lot about storage, and somewhat about sales, which is kind of cool. But thanks, Brian.
What did you not like about certain managers that kind of motivated you to become one?
One of my friends says, you don't want a manager who says, what can I do? What can I do? Now, it sounds intuitively like a genuine offer. It shows you have no idea what's going on, and you're doing it to maybe you got the position because someone liked you at a cocktail party or whatever, and you're in the position not because of whatever. I think good managers should know what to do and almost create a swim lane where they involve themselves exactly. We happened to win a deal in New York City recently at our company. And we used our CEO, I don't say used, but we leveraged our CEO exactly for one thing. He only came on board, boom, a 5-minute thing. He was asking in the background, not getting in the way, but he actually helped for a precise moment that we needed him so badly, and he nailed it and then went back out of the way, which is great. So what didn't I like? Obviously, no one likes micromanagers. I hope someone listening to me today doesn't say, oh, I had Growy as a manager, he's a micromanager. I bet you they didn't. They probably said he enabled me and let me alone and then helped me and guided me and tried to make me what the professional I wanted to be. So suffocation isn't good. Micromanagement isn't good. And I can't take credit for this, Brian, but one of my friends who's at SAP and now he's at Coupa, and in between that, he was at NVIDIA, all great sales organizations. He said, I hate sales managers says, what can I do? What can I do to offer? You should know. And if you don't, you're probably not in the right job. And that's kind of cruel, but I think your podcast says the brutal truth. That's the brutal truth.
Yeah, because I feel kind of the same way. And I kind of left sales and started my own thing, not because I was burnt out of selling. I was burnt out of working for people who didn't know what they were doing. Mm-hmm. You know, people would call into my account without talking to me first.
Oh, that's bad. You got to get a heads up. There's a time. Yeah, it has to be concerted. You're right. There's a time for that, by the way. There is a time for that, but it's got to be in concerted, concatenated. Again, back to my CEO, our CEO doing a great job. He did it completely. In fact, sorry, you probably know this. We actually told him what the construct was, not the exact words and verbs,
right?
But we told him what he should do, stay in that lane and make it happen. But yeah, nothing could be worse than out of the blue, someone who, I apologize, but I'll just say that isn't as talented as you, isn't as close as you, but phantomly puts a call in. It actually demotivates the salesperson, demotivates the team, breaks military rank. Sorry, I was born in a naval base, so I come to adhere to that. And it actually confuses the customer, in my opinion.
Well, that's it, because they don't know who this person was. And, my manager was trying to expedite the deal, didn't even tell me that he was calling in. And I agree with you. Executives are to be used appropriately at different stages and well within the lane, because they tend to muck it up because they've got their own agenda. But anyways, well, what do you like about leadership? You've been in it for a while.
Well, someone said, Kenny, you're a good leader. You're not the best manager. Okay, I get that. Maybe that means I'm not a good micromanager. Um, as I get older, I've been incredibly lucky, Brian, and I've been at 4 out of 5 companies I joined had incredible exits. One was an IPO. EMC kind of changed the trajectory of high-tech selling forever. If you think about it, the day I joined EMC, we were 1% of 1% of 1% of the market share of storage. Now, if you did a Mount Rushmore storage, at least 2 of the people of that 4 would actually be from EMC. So it's pretty cool. Why I got into leadership? Again, I wanted to kind of show people a few things that have been out there. I've been blessed to have incredible mentors. Literally one of the ones at the very beginning at a company called EMC said to me, Kenny, if you can bring enough passion and conviction for a customer, if you could, this might rub people the wrong way, but I'll just say it, because if you could pretend you have the cure to cancer, and the only way you can cure the person is not by sending an email with a cure to cancer because it doesn't fit in a PDF, but literally talking with the person, empathizing with the person, justifying it jointly, where they're doing half the work, you're doing the work with your champion, and then going wider with the account to expose it. If you literally have the cure to cancer, but you have to do it by belly to belly selling, doing an as is to be environment, or some people call it current state, future state. If you're able to do that, you've won, because then every involvement, even this, hopefully the readers, when you watch this, go, gee, this really important to this guy. Yeah. I hope that comes across. But one of my mentors was saying, pretend you have the cure to cancer every day, every meeting, 8 to 12 meetings per week, and it will come across because you'll get enough conviction. Your champion will then do some selling for you when you're not in the room. And that's even more important, Brian, in a COVID generation where people need their champion to sell internally. And then people may not be used to, some people can work a room. It's tougher to work a Zoom room, and it's tougher to sell across.
It is. Well, yeah. Because
you also distractions. Yeah, some people have dogs or babies or male people coming out there. You've got distractions and to corral everybody out there. So why do I lead leadership? I was blessed to join an incredibly lucky company that enabled everybody, that empowered everybody. I'm sorry, I'll get to the story eventually, but that literally said to us, I was playing darts on a Friday night and it said, hey, I'd love to open up your Pittsburgh office. Great. Go get a map at the mobile gas station and head west. We heard it's west. And then the enablement that company gave me to drive west, hire an admin, lease a fax machine. Yes, I said the word lease. I leased a fax machine and signed up some office space. Was incredible. The empowerment they gave and the sales-centric, the customer-centric of it was incredible. But to answer your question, I was blessed to work at some companies that were sales-centric and customer-centric earlier. And anybody who's gone 4 out of 5 working in places has some stories and some good culture they learned from. And my job is to pay it forward and show it to other people. So that's why I think sales leadership makes sense and why I like doing it.
Wow, 25 years there. It must have been something, some mojo.
It was a very good environment. And I'm so happy to see some of the people that were slightly ahead of me or peers with me now being CXXs everywhere. BJ Jenkins, I worked for at Barracuda. What a prince of a man. He brought them public and then he brought them private. He actually was, one year he worked for me and then the same year I worked for him in the same year. So if you think about it, for a while there, until it got too big, the lack of politics was incredible. So I worked for Billy Scannell. He's a legend. He's still at Dell. I don't know why, because he's got enough money to buy small towns and eventually he probably will. But you know, just the fact that he would grind and get in a plane, go out to Latrobe, Pennsylvania with me to go see Kennametal, the company that makes craftsman wrenches, for goodness sakes. We probably all have them in our toolbox. And somehow in 15 minutes, the first 15 minutes of the meeting, these folks who had never met Billy, and Billy was from Massachusetts and had a little bit of an accent and, you know, running at a different RPM speed than they were, somehow he connected with them. And almost like I had spent 12 meetings with those folks at Kennametal. And then mysteriously, they're looking at him, not because of the title, but he had earned that right. I had other managers at EMC that did the same thing. Standard Products, they made the fenders on cars. Like these executives would fly in, or mid-level sales executives, and somehow the customer would connect with them better than I was. So I used them as role models as part of it. But incredible role models. Most of those people are either at venture capitalists or CXXs at companies, either CROs certainly, or CEOs. And they tend to have something in common. They try to run a customer-centric culture, and people follow them. And I'm blessed. I looked at the number of followers you have, and I have a lot of followers too. Most of the people that I have hired but mostly they're people I've hired and I gave them a break.
Yep.
Maybe they didn't have the greatest grades. Maybe they took 6 years to finish in 4, and there was a reason for it. And it wasn't aptitude,
Sure.
some other economic reasons. I went for financial aid scholarship to Boston College. So if people had the grit and the courage to do it, I took a few risks on some people throughout the years, and those are the ones I'm most proud of. But yeah, incredible run. And I'm sorry, to the final point I had is Billy Scannell once said to everybody, you want to get promoted? Stand in front of your peers, do better numbers. That's it. That's if you want to get promoted. It wasn't the politics. It wasn't said he said, she said. It wasn't, sorry, I can't make fun of that cocktail party stuff all the time. It was basically, you want to do better, stand in front of your peers, present better, know your customers better, know why they're buying, go get the beta sites, get the stuff that's pushing the envelope that helps the company, get the customer references, get the testimonials, do it in front of your peers, not to show them up, but just to show you're running ahead, be respectful. But if your numbers do it, you'll move ahead. That's it.
And what kept you there for such a long run? Because I'm sure the phone was ringing with headhunters offering you, because I mean, you went through the whole cloud, you went through kind of mini workstation,
Oh yeah, I went from
ASP,
when I
cloud.
first started, Brian, people bought, I'm going to date myself. People bought Prime. Yes, Prime was a computer, not
I
a
remember
shipping service
Prime.
for Amazon. Prime, Wang. Yes, Wang was really cool. John Chambers came out of Wang. So did Joe Tucci, obviously. Hewlett Packard still doing well. Great on the scientific bent. IBM, all we knew about IBM is you wore starched white collars and you didn't have the best computer, but oh well, you're IBM. And Digital. To
Yep.
be brutally honest, I wanted to work for Digital. I thought Ken Blanchard, maybe he had the same first name as me. I wanted to work for Digital. It was at a Maynard, Mass. I go, great, it'll be a home game for me. And they kind of imploded right in front of me. In fact, the origin of that company I worked for was all around choice. The origin of EMC wasn't building a better storage system. It was if you bought one of those minis, Brian, you were trapped. Everyone knows whatever you buy, even a phone, it has to be upgraded every 18 to 24 months. It's got some planned obsolescence in it. And
Right.
Moore's law is real. So how'd you like to buy something that to go back and upgrade it, you have to buy from that vendor. They're making 90% margin and it sucks. Like the storage sucks or the memory sucks. That's what happened. Believe it or not, it was very democratic. EMC was created out of choice.
Yeah.
And then ironically, we'll get to it eventually. I happen to be the president of a company that's doing the same thing now, but instead of giving people a choice, making storage a whole business. So it used to be you buy a server and an afterthought was a storage. And it was some external thing like stereo speakers. Sorry, again, debate myself. You buy a 19-inch stereo rack from, Sound Design or whatever place, or the stereo outlet or Kmart, and you buy some kick butt Blaupunkt speakers or Jensen speakers or whatever in your car or whatever. Well, that's kind of ran its 30 years. You're going to see some announcement from us and our friends over at SAP with SAP HANA does the same thing. You're going to see that storage move inside. No different than we've seen with the iPhone. No one buys an external speaker to a phone. You might do a Bluetooth for a little bit of sound quality, but imagine if everywhere you went, your mobile phone, you had to attach something separate as a storage device.
Yeah.
Flash has made that possible. The cloud's made it possible, but you're going to see some things pendulum move back. But incredible ride, and I'm blessed to have worked there. And actually, ironically, I'm the oldest of 3 brothers. All 3 of us spent some time at EMC. And I think we all really like it. In fact, our middle brother, Kevin's still there. He runs the Midwest for EMC, or I'm sorry, Dell.
And what was it like going from like a big machine like that to a startup?
Oh, I loved it. Sorry, I didn't give you the best question why I stayed at EMC at the end. If you ask my wife, I stayed 10 years too long. We should have moved to California earlier, because I don't know what it is. You buy a house here for $1 and it's worth $2 in 3 years. And by the way, that $1 you're paying is twice what you really want. But you live outside and it's incredible. But I stayed there because EMC, and God bless Clayton Christensen, he wrote a great paper from Harvard Business Review a while ago, but the innovator's dilemma, they tried as best they could to disrupt themselves at the end. And they gave I gave people a few risks. They gave me, I never forget it, on CNBC, yes, that was a thing at one point. On CNBC, Mike Ruckers, the CEO of EMC, bought Data General and called me up one day right after the interview. And I go, wow, I was on the treadmill today and you were on CNBC. He goes, Kenny, I want you to teach these young kids how to sell stereo units instead of refrigerators. Sorry, we were selling $1 million refrigerators and we bought a company that was selling stereos. Sorry, it was storage, but not really stereo units, but about that. And they gave me a great break. And then at the end, I ran some of the software group. Yes, EMC has software, but at the time they didn't. And then I ran the Flash group. So I saw that coming and they let me do disruption. So that's how I held on at the end. So anybody who's at a bigger company, if you have someone that you think is an A player or a rising star, or what they call them, hypos these days, high potentials, you can keep them a little bit longer if you find a disruptive business. I became a GM of business. I became jealous in that I just tried to decide whether I was going to go in engineering or sales, and I chose sales at the end. But I wanted to manage, as a general manager, some of the engineering as part of it. But what was it like? It was really cool going to a company in Milpitas, California, the day after I left EMC after 25 years, to go in, and there was 70 employees, and know that you can bring in a gong, you can bring in a bell. Every new customer is a bell. Every $1 million deal is a gong. People really listen to you. And then every week I would send an email called Market Share, and that was basically what the customers were saying about our product. So in this unique case, the company was called Virident, Virdent. It's Latin for green, or it's a derivative of the word green. It made a PCI card that competed with Fusion IO, Brian. Yep. But my point being is, it was a company that was starved to move to customer centricity. And if you can find that position, it makes all the sense in the world. So I loved it. They hung on every word I went through. I gave a speech that because of where the equity was, everyone was always worried, in Silicon Valley, everyone's like, well, if the company gets sold or IPO, everyone's going to make enough to buy a mansion. Well, I gave a speech going, you can't buy a mansion with what you're going to make. You're going to make a swimming pool. And I was so happy years afterwards, people sent me pictures of their swimming pools. People that, they weren't executives, but they made a lot of money from the outcome, which was incredible. So it was incredibly rallying. It was fun. And it kept me wanting, and my wife and my family, to move to California, which growing up in Massachusetts, I didn't know where California was. And my perceptions, based on Baywatch and some other perceptions.
Right past Worcester.
Right past Worcester. That's the triple decker. But, but like, I thought, I had a college roommate that was a Grateful Dead fan. I didn't know what the Grateful Dead was. This hacky sack, I didn't know what it was. Granola, I didn't know what it was. And he enlightened me. And Mike Lateef, thank you if you're listening. But it just, being a startup for the right person is great. I say this to my one brothers and both brothers all the time. If there's a company you've never heard the name of, that's okay. Google search them. They should have an explainer video on there. But if it addresses a TAM, it depends where you are in your life. Sometimes it's good to go for it. Or, sorry, not to sound like Steve Harvey, to make the jump. Because if not, sorry, not talking about my own life, but I just didn't want to be a GM of Semantic, laying off people for a living. Sorry,
No, you don't.
Yeah, I just don't want to be that person, looking at spreadsheets all day. And I'm okay when you join a company, no one has any idea what the company's name is. But if it's makes something unique that only they have, and the TAM is huge, and the company's willing to move to customer centricity, that's the place you jump to. And if you get the chance, your videos are incredible, but watch the one that Steve Harvey does in an outtake after Family Feud. And he talks about his life. I think he talks about being homeless or whatever. And then he talks about how he had the courage to jump at one point. And at some point, whether it's a physical move, or if you think about it, if you're married, you probably had to jump on that situation. There's no book that says when you exactly propose, when exactly you get married, when exactly you have kids, when exactly you have a family. At some point, you just have that conviction and jump. So I would not be intimidated if the company's name, who knew Snowflake a few years ago? Who knew Zoom a few years ago? Well, I did, but not everyone did. Then if you jump to those companies, you tend to have a great ride. So hope that answers your question.
But it must have been quite an adjustment going from having a big staff or a big brand name behind you, customer base.
Yeah, I went from managing 880 people and $1.2 billion, and you didn't have to ask for meetings. You just came and arrived. Hey, I'm coming on Tuesday at 10. Clear the conference room for me and the boardroom and bring your boss. To, work for Virident. Yeah, you had to earn that right. You had to earn that right. And it's funny you mentioned that. People misunderstand this. The LinkedIn profile, it's not really an advertisement for you. It's a justification. And you've said this before as well. Whenever I'll call it, preferably you get a warm introduction, but sometimes you just can't. Sometimes it's a cold outreach. Yeah. They will check your LinkedIn. And what they're checking is, does the person look and act? Even more than that, forget the looks for a second, act. Do they act like someone who deserves to get your time and your money? And I'm surprised how some people don't do pictures or don't really show what they've really done. And there's a fine line between over advertising and under advertising. Oh. But I say this to our sales team, you have to, if you're selling a $400,000 item, do you look and act on your LinkedIn and you to participate in the ecosystem and post to groups and participate? Do you look like someone who deserves to get $400,000 checks from companies? Because people will check that. And if
It's
they don't,
crazy. People who like,
yeah, their
they'll,
boss
they'll
is
have
awesome.
like their wedding picture, or they'll have like a prom picture with a bow tie. It's like, are you bringing your spouse on the sales call? No, it should be, what do you look like when I meet you? Can I
If
pick
not
you
better
out
than
of a
that,
crowd?
well, you know the whole phrase, dress or act where you want to be, not where you're at.
Yeah,
So it's no, I mean, that's where I put the coat on for you, Brian. I want to
I
look where I
appreciate
want to
that.
be. You deserve that. But my point being is it just, as you take that, as you make the change, when you go from managing 880 people and 1.2 billion to a company that's in the middle of Milpitas, you may not know Silicon Valley, but it's not exactly the best place of Silicon Valley. No bad disrespect to Milpitas, but there's other more glamorous areas. We liked it where it's at, but you had to earn every meeting. The revenues were around $3 million and 70 people, but it caused people to rally around it. I have a mentor, Mike Gustafson. He says, yeah, you learn how to make your own coffee. You didn't have to make your own coffee. You had to make your own copy, not just copies, but your own copy on the website. I had to learn how to HTML code. I had to write all the videos. So, and create some of the meetings. And then, most of the people, if you're in sales, if you go to a small company, I don't know if it's a recruited hire or just a buddy hire, they're going to want to know how many followers you have. And whether they say or they don't, they're thinking when you're not in the room, if that person joins, can that he or she bring 20 to 30 customers or at least meetings? They're thinking that. And if it's a coin flip, who they can bring is a big thing. So, but to answer your question, for me, it was thrilling. It's not for everybody. But I was there at the EMC when it was nothing. So it was easier for me. But if you're at a big company and your first job is at a big company, and then you go to a startup, like, where's the mission statement? Where's the rules and regulations?
The other thing is I was always a startup guy, and they would always bring in somebody either in management or reps from one of the gorillas, the Oracles, the Sun Microsystems, the BEAs. And the problem was they were used to leads and accounts and having infrastructure, consultants and engineers to help them. And then all of a sudden you go to a startup and it's like, no leads. Here's your laptop. They haven't prospected in forever. And when they got in, they'd have to have 3 people go with them. It's a very different world.
That's why I like telling that story about EMC. I'm literally playing darts on a Friday night. You have the Pittsburgh office. I heard it's west. I'm not kidding. That's what was said. Okay, I'm gonna go buy a map. There used to be things called Rand McNally maps.
Yep.
Before there was lamination, you had pages. They advanced and went to lamination. You just headed west. And my daughter actually interned for me at one point, and she actually finished my sentence. She goes, "I know, Dad, I'll figure it out." So it's not that I don't want to tell everybody, but you got to hire people who know how to do it. And then, ironically, my daughter was approached recently by an executive, a good friend of mine, to run their social media account while she's still in college of an up-and-coming startup. My daughter, Olivia, nice shout out to her, I hope, but she's about 50 feet away from me in the house. And she was also an intern at Zoom and Barracuda and some other places. But she goes, "Dad, if they're not going to create all this content, I'll create the content for them, or I'll create information." They're in the security place, but then again, who is in the security place? "I'll create information in the security sector and post it all around." They can't wait for someone to write copy and white papers and solution briefs. You just got to make it happen. And she's used to seeing that. So if you come from that mindset where nothing's really given to you, you have to take it. And there's a great opportunity out there, but you literally have to do it. And if you're the type of salesperson who can be dropped in the middle of Manhattan with, naked and $1 and you come up a millionaire later, that's the type of person that's going to make it. So,
and when you're hiring reps, I'm sure you've seen a lot of reps. What separated the very best, that top 1% from the top 5%?
I'm not the only one who's going to say this. An innate ability to curiosity. It has to be a natural curiosity and some competition. It has to be. I just took, if you get a chance for Christmas gifts, it was not an expensive gift, but all leaders out there, I did buy the book on Strengths Finders. So I had everybody take the online test for Strength Finders. And my number 3 one was competition. And that kind of explains, for Christmas, we got this bowling game. And I could not sleep one night until I had the top score in my family. And it really mattered everything to me. And it just kind of out there. So I would say a curiosity and competition. And what I've usually done in interviews, I've had them actually give presentations of what things would be like. It shows how much research they can do on their own, grabbing things. So it's not like handing people on a platter, like you said before. You know, you're not employee number 1,000 at Adobe or 10,000 at Cisco. You know, can you figure it out? I mean, there's enough information that's out there just on the web by itself. It's unbelievable. But and sorry, Dick Egan, I gave a presentation to at Goodyear in 1992, maybe the most American company I ever saw in my life. They had like 19 flags outside. Before you went up the escalator, you had to pledge allegiance. And you almost had the Star Spangled Banner being sung in the halls as you went in it. And we gave a presentation, and I just stood up, started to date myself again. I used something called foils. Foils were later replaced by transparencies, and transparencies were replaced by something called PowerPoint, which used a computer. But at the time I had 9 slides, and I told the story. You do that better than anybody. I told the story, and I brought an overhead projector, like that old thing. And I actually brought an extra bulb with me. But I gave that presentation, told the story. I sat down, we shook hands, and they signed in the meeting. Wow. So ironic, the guy who helped grow Sign Now, they used to take a ballpoint pen with a big pen and sign right in front of you. And that's how you process business. And you shook hands, look in the eye, firm handshake, and then they would sign. And if they were big enough, they had to go through the legal route, but we had already done that, which is great. So that happened. We sit down. Dick Egan, the E of EMC, says, Kenny, great job on the sale. But more importantly, that was a great presentation. You know, he didn't ask how he knew how to do it. He knew he had hired okay. I want you still like Boston? I love Boston. Great. Do you have money to fly back to Boston? Hell no. You haven't paid me enough yet. Great. Fly back to Boston a couple of weeks, a quarter, and I want you to be a guest speaker at our new hire training. And do me a better favor. Are the people that act and look and talk like you and care like you? Yeah. Go hire them all. Yeah, but they're not marketing majors or customer science majors. I don't care. Just go hire and act them. And I'm blessed to have a lot of my high school friends and college friends actually joined, and it's been a great thing. But no, what he did say to me is, Brian, ask the same 3 questions. So I didn't count it, but I speculate I've interviewed over 10,000 people in my life, and I've hired a couple thousand of those, so about a 10 to 20% ratio, so it's tough to get through to get the jobs. I asked the same 3 questions, and one of them is something about your heart. I won't reveal the question. Something is about how connected people are, because a lot of people that say they're in sales, but they're in alliances or partnerships. You know, unless you have a quota on your head, and unless you do it with conviction, people don't hire. I got to hire those 2. And there's times to hire alliances and partnership people, but real sales, there's 3 questions I ask in the middle about that, and people know how to fake or not fake. And then I ask one street smart question that's actually a logic question. I won't reveal it right now, but I've asked those same 3 questions for the last 20 years, and they've served me, actually 30 years, and they've served me pretty well.
Cool. Hey, this has been a fun conversation. Give people an idea where they can connect you, and if you're looking for anything right now.
Oh, good. Yeah, we're looking to hire right now. Always good sales executives. The company I'm working for now is Weka, Weka.io. It's very fast growing. Grew 600% last year, grew 350% this year. At the end of the day, we're the world's fastest file system, but we actually have created a limitless data platform we'll be announcing on February 2nd, which is great. We solve big problems. You might say, that sounds kind of abstract, Kenny. You know, get it more real for that. Well, if you are the richest person in the world and you run a company that is the leader in autonomous vehicles, you probably want a file system that can go from those 220 sensors on your awesome car that's semi-autonomous, and you want to get it autonomously. And you probably want something really reliable and fast to go up to the satellites, up and back. So when a skunk goes on the road, you can swerve around it, or you get a yield, you know your way around it intuitively. And I think JD Powers, our friends there, have basically said that's the most reliable car and safe car that's out there. So we supply to that company, and that's exciting. And then everyone's dealing with COVID. I mean, this one a few times all day, I don't have a mask on. And, you know, we participated in some of the companies as they got their vaccine through FDA approval. And if you think about it, the biggest race in history is not the Daytona 500 or the Indianapolis 500, or if you're a fan of Dom DeLuise, the Cannonball Run, old movie, if you want to watch that. Not a good movie, but it is a movie. The greatest race in history was, how do we get our lives back? And how do we save people that are affected by COVID? So the race to go vaccine, it's intuitive that we would have helped out some of those companies that were doing that, because we have a product that can literally have thousands and thousands and thousands of the smartest scientists in the world all working on it at the same time. Quick analogy, but if you and I were working a paper, would you want to work on a Microsoft Word or would you use Google Docs? You use
Right.
Google Docs because whoever you
Share.
have overripe positions, you know the whole thing. Well, imagine you have 10,000 scientists, all brilliant with PhDs, trying to work on vaccines. Do you want someone saying, I'll work this in 1045, you work this at 11, and work serially wise? No. So we have a parallel file system that's extremely modern and completely limitless. And that's helped with the vaccines. And then more importantly, well, not more important than that, but almost as importantly, we work with Biden's administration and some of the consultants and ex-CIOs of the federal government to actually work out a COVID resiliency so that you can figure out who gets the tier one, which is first responders and healthcare workers. My daughter actually is a social worker in Queens, Erin, she is going to get the vaccine before I should. If you have asthma, you go a little bit higher up. If you're a dentist, you go a little bit higher up. But they worked out a way holistically. We work with Genomics England overseas and the Swiss Institute of Bioinformatics to work it out fairly across the globe. And believe it or not, that took more data and more analytics and more algorithms to figure out that. But to answer your question, we've kind of revitalized and created a limitless data platform called Weka, Weka.io. We're in a hell of a role. We're hiring great people. It's very technical because we're talking to data scientists as they talk to IT, creating a new role called Chief Data Officer. If you're a young person and you're looking for a career in information technology that talks about AI, my prediction, you will become a chief data officer over time and you'll have an incredible trajectory as part of it. But I'm available at Weka. I post a lot on LinkedIn, as you do as well. That seems to be my favorite social media these days. Either find me there or Weka.io or my email. I have a unique last name. It's Grohe, Grohe at Weka.io. Please send me an email. And if you want to solve big problems, that'd be great. And we do scale as small as 5 nodes and 64 terabytes. That's one of our smaller configurations. And we do run in Amazon Web Services. So if someone says, I want to try this, do it for free on Amazon Web Service in their marketplace. 3 clicks, you're using it right away. And on the other end of the spectrum, if you're the federal government, you already know us, you're running an exabyte plus of us already. So really exciting times for us. And we'd like to pay it forward and find the right people at the right place at the right time. But thanks for teeing it up, Ryan.